In this video, I'm going to show how to place a front wheel bearing on this Fiat 500. This is a press-in bearing, so just so you know, I will be using a hydraulic press to do this. They do make other tools that you can do the bearing on the car with. Also after this job, because we're disassembling the whole front knuckle, you do need an alignment. Let's get started. Now let's remove the wheel, and if your vehicle has these hubcaps, you're going to need a pry bar of some sort to remove the hubcap. Stick it underneath one of the areas that has the clamps that hold on. You can see them through the little openings. Try to be gentle, pry a little bit at a time, and walk it off. Try not to break it, of course. All right, pull it off, and now that exposes the four 17mm headed lug bolts. Take those off. Once again, 17mm socket, remove all four. From the backside of the knuckle, you'll see two 19mm bolts holding on the caliper and bracket assembly on the knuckle. Let's remove this entire assembly and set it aside. Leave this bolt threaded in a couple turns so it can hold the caliper while you remove the lower. With the lower removed, remove the upper as well. Hold on to the caliper so it doesn't fall off. Pull it off of the rotor. And I'm going to flip it up and hang it on the strut with a bungee cord. I don't want to put pressure on this brake hose, so I'm not going to let it hang. A little bit further down, we have the lower ball joint with a pinch bolt. Because I'm right here, I'm going to remove this now, and then we'll come back to this once the rest of the knuckle is unbolted so we can just pop it off the ball joint. Use a 17mm socket on the bolt side. Most of the time, the mounting nut on the back will spin, so hold it with a wrench. Use a 17mm for that as well. Take the bolt out. We're just going to leave this like this for now. On the other side of the knuckle, let's remove the tie rod. The mounting nut is secured with a cotter pin. So with some cutters or pliers, undo the cotter pin and pull it through. Take that out and discard it. You don't want to use the same cotter pin twice. Use a 16mm socket and remove the mounting nut. Use a hammer and tap the knuckle on the side. That'll break this tie rod stud free from the knuckle. Remove it, set it aside. Here on the front of the rotor, we have a couple things to do. We have to remove these little bolts that hold the rotor onto the hub, and then we have to remove the axle nut. For these two studs, you will need a deep 12mm socket. Careful, because now the rotor falls off. Take that off and set it aside. Now you'll have to use a thin wall 36mm socket to remove the axle nut here, and the clearance here is very tight. So you're going to have to make sure you have an adequate socket that actually fits in here so you can properly remove this mounting nut. All right, and now you want to make sure the axle pushes through the hub and it's not seized in there. If it was, you'd take a punch right in the center and a hammer and tap it through. Now from the back side of our knuckle, we have to remove the ABS sensor. Use a 5mm Allen socket. Make sure it's fully seated into that bolt so that you don't actually strip the bolt out. Sometimes they get stuck in here. And then remove it. With the bolt out, you should be able to grab the ABS sensor very gently with some pliers, wiggle it, and pull it out. All right, carefully set this aside. Let's unbolt the strut from the knuckle. Use a 17mm socket on one side to hold the mounting nut, and then the 15mm bolt removed from the other side with your tool. Push the bolts out. Now pull the knuckle down and push the axle through at the same time. You don't want this to get separated on the inner CV joint. So separate it over here, lean the whole thing to the side, and now you should be able to wiggle this right off the ball joint. You may need to insert a chisel or a pry bar in here just to spread this so it can let go of the ball joint, but mine came off, so there it is. Now we can replace our bearing. With the knuckle and bearing assembly on the workbench from the backside, we can see there's a snap ring holding this on. Right here are the two ends of it. I sprayed this down with some rust penetrant. Now this snap ring, you can't really use snap ring pliers to get it, this particular style. You just have to pry on these two ears and pop it up and out. So I'm using a screwdriver applying a little bit of pressure, twisting it, and it may fall back into place, but as soon as you lift it up and out, you can walk it right out of its groove. Just be careful, have a hand on it so it doesn't go flying once it actually does fully pop out. There it is. You want to inspect its condition. These are reusable as long as they're not rusted out. This one's okay, so I can reuse it, but if yours is not, replace it. I have my knuckle set up on the press, a couple adapters here, and I have a 1-inch socket that's pressing right on the hub on the inside of the wheel bearing. That's where we're going to have to press out first. So let's apply some pressure, go slow, and if anything starts going sideways, applying uneven pressure, stop, back it off, and reset it. Okay, there's the hub. Let's remove the knuckle. We'll flip it over because the bearing actually comes out from the backside. Now I have my knuckle set up in the press the other way around because, as I mentioned, the bearing gets pressed out through the backside of the knuckle. I have an adapter here that's going to press on the inner race so it can push this whole thing out. A couple spacers, and then on the bottom I just have an old wheel bearing that's hollowed out so that my wheel bearing can drop right into that one. Now let's apply some pressure and push this out. There it goes. Grab the knuckle, take out your old parts. There's the old wheel bearing. And there's the knuckle. We'll have to clean up the mounting area to make sure the new bearing will seat properly. Use a wire brush and clean up the area where the snap ring goes. This is also where the bearing is going to press through. So if there's any rust chunks here, they're actually going to get pulled down with the wheel bearing, and that's not a good thing. You want it to be completely seated. So I'm not looking to get this looking brand new, but I am looking to clean up all of the rust, spin it around, make sure all of this is good. And then all the way down here, you'll see there is a little bit more rust. I'm going to clean this as well. Same thing, doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be clean. Once you're done cleaning this, you can rinse it off with some brake parts cleaner. One more thing I'd like to mention is when you are reusing the hub, typically the inner race of the bearing gets stuck to it. In my case, it did not. It's still on the bearing, which works out. If yours gets stuck here, there are multiple ways of removing it. You can heat it up while spinning this hub upside down, and if you heat it up hot enough, it'll fall off. Or you can make a cut in it, chisel it so it breaks, and then once it releases pressure, you can slide it right off. Regardless, make sure this is also clean. This right here is going to press back into the bearing. Then we can get back to installing our bearing. When you install this bearing in the knuckle, you want to make sure that you put it on the correct way. It is directional because the backside has a magnet. This is where the ABS sensor reads off of, so if you put it backwards, ABS won't work, and of course you're going to have to redo the job. So make sure that this part with the magnet faces the back side of the knuckle, not the front side. Here I have the bearing and the knuckle set up in the press. This is the new bearing, of course, with the magnet facing up towards the back side of the knuckle. This is my old bearing, which I'm using just as an adapter to press perfectly on the outer race of this new bearing. You don't want to press on the inner race. This will help me do just that. A little spacer here. Let's apply some pressure and make sure this goes in nice and flat, or even, I should say. If it starts going at an angle, back it off immediately because it can cause damage to the knuckle and the bearing. Oh, that sounded like it bottomed out. Give it one extra pump just to ensure that it is fully seated, which it is at this point, so I'm going to release pressure. Grab our adapter, or spacer, and then the old bearing. Double check, this is perfectly seated for sure. I can see the groove that the snap ring is supposed to sit in, and if you do not, that means it is not pressed in all the way. So at this point we can flip it over, support it from the back side so that the inner race on the back doesn't pop out, and we'll press the hub in. I actually have it set up the same way. I slid the hub underneath with it pressing up into the bearing, of course. A little adapter here that is holding onto the inner race on the back side of the hub. You don't want to press on the outer one anymore. And then of course a spacer to take up the space. Let's apply some pressure. Make sure that this is going in nice and even. Give it a spin every once in a while to ensure that it's not binding up. If it is, that most likely means it's going in at an angle, so you'd have to stop. That just stopped. Give it one extra pump to ensure that everything's good. It's spinning very freely, no resistance, so I'm sure that this is fully seated. Release pressure. Remove your tools, adapters, whatever you may have installed here. And here is our bearing and hub installed. Now let's go over to the bench and put our snap ring back in. Let's get our snap ring back. We're gonna have to install it in the groove and then just kind of walk it in. And of course, ensure that it is completely pressed in. I made sure that the opening of the snap ring is right where the ABS sensor goes. That way it has clear access to read the back side of the bearing. Back at the vehicle, take the knuckle and slide it on the lower ball joint. There we go. Let's install the bolt that secures the lower ball joint and pinches the knuckle back together. Install the mounting nut. Let's snug this up. 17mm socket and 17mm wrench. Snug it. Hold the bolt with a 17mm wrench and torque the mounting nut side to 48 foot-pounds. There we go. Bring the axle back over. I'm going to spray the splines with some anti-seize. I'm going to apply some anti-seize on the splines. I like to do this so that it doesn't get stuck in the hub in the future. You don't need a lot, just a thin coating. Now you grab the axle and slide it through the bearing and through the hub. And realign the strut with the knuckle at the top here. I have my 2 bolts ready, and remember they went front to back. Put the 2 mounting nuts on. Ensure that the knuckle is pushed in all the way. Tighten up the bolts, 15mm socket, 17 wrench. Torque these two to 55 foot-pounds. Grab the ABS sensor. I like to put a little bit of grease on the base of it right here where it mounts, just so it's less likely to seize up in the future. And you want to make sure you press it down all the way by hand. Don't pull it in with the bolt because it can actually tilt it and could damage it. Slide the bolt in and thread it on all the way. And when it comes to tightening this, a little bit goes a long way because this is very small and can break. So this is bottomed out about 1/8 of a turn at most. Extra, that's plenty tight right there. It just needs to hold this on here. Take your tie rod stud and put it back through the knuckle. And the mounting nut. Bottom this out. Torque this to 30 foot-pounds. This being a castle nut, you have to go over to the next slot so that the cotter pin lines up. Never loosen these. If it doesn't, looks like I have to go a little bit more. That's it right there. Install a new cotter pin. Slide in a new cotter pin, and of course bend it over to lock it in. Let's reinstall the axle nut. We'll bottom it out. I'm not going to tighten it with my air tool. I'm just going to bottom it out and get it snug. It's going to be difficult to torque the axle nut as it is right now. So what I'm going to do, instead of putting studs in here and using a pry bar on them, which you could, I'm going to mount everything, brakes, caliper, and then I'm going to use the slots on the center of the rotor to put a screwdriver in. That will stop this from spinning and I can fully torque it at that point. So we'll remember that this is snugged up for now. The hub surface is very clean for me. If it wasn't, I would sand it down to basically look like this. You don't want any rust or debris in the way. That's going to push the rotor out a little bit. It'll cause it not to seat properly, and that can cause braking issues and pulsations. So I'm going to coat this in some anti-seize, that way it does not corrode in the future. That'll also help the rotor not seize on there. Try to avoid getting it in the threads of the lug bolts. My rotor is new, so it's actually clean on the backside where it mounts to the hub. If it wasn't, I would do the same thing. Sand it down and make sure it's nice and flat. Now take the rotor and mount it so that it lines up with the 2 bolt holes that you put those 2 pins in to lock the rotor onto the hub. And next I'm going to do just that. I have these ready to go. Slide these in and thread them on. Snug them up. These don't have to be very tight, just nice and snug. Take the brake caliper, slide it back over the rotor, make sure the pads haven't shifted around or fallen off. Line it up with the 2 bolt holes and have the bolts ready to go. Start one on, then you can let go and start in the second. Snug both of these up. Torque them to 77 foot-pounds. So now it's time to torque the axle nut. I have a punch that I'm going to put right in here. This is going to stop the rotor from spinning and the entire hub assembly. And as I turn this, I will be able to accurately torque it. The torque for this is 229 foot-pounds. All right. In the center, you'll see the axle has a slot. We have to stake the axle nut down. That's how you lock it in. So take a chisel and a hammer and tap it down. There we go. That's plenty. Let's put the wheel back on. Line it up. Press it on. Put on all 4 lug bolts. We'll torque these to 63 foot-pounds if you have the steel wheels like this, or if you have aluminum wheels, it'll be 75 foot-pounds, both in a cross pattern to seat the wheel properly. Because we have steel wheels, I'm going to torque these to 63 foot-pounds, but if you have aluminum wheels, once again, 75 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Double check them. Let's put on the hubcap. You'll see that it has a little cutout on this spring and even a little diagram that shows you where the valve stem is supposed to line up with. Otherwise, it won't really fit through every other cutout. So you want to make sure you line that up and press it on. And there you have it. Take it for a road test and don't forget to get an alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.